This setup for black is called the Philidor opening. So takes queen d4, knight c6, bishop b5, pretty standard. Yeah, okay, so there isn't much to talk about in this first game.
Guys, if Hikaru wants some advice, I'm free on mostly Sundays and Monday mornings. I think it's get better at the game.
That's funny.
Wait.
Oh no, don't tell me his opponent makes a stalemate here by making a third. That is one thing that's so funny about chess is when you accidentally stalemate someone, you feel so bad, but when someone does it to you, it's like the greatest feeling in the world. It's like literally the greatest feeling in the world. There's like nothing better than when you're completely lost like this and your opponent does it. Like it's the greatest feeling in the world. So this actually is that's hilarious. But he's over 1200, right? You guys said is he? Let me take a look. Let's take a look and see what he's been doing. I'll take a look at the last like 3 to 4 games. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at the last let's see, does this open? How many games has he played? 1 second. Let me see. Wait, actually let me go back. Okay, this is these were he's played wait, how many games did he play today? Wait a second, what is this? 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20. He's played at least 20 games. What? He's played at least 20 games today. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Yeah, no, I know it's off stream, but that's still crazy. That's insane. Okay, all right, we'll just take a look at his last 5 games very briefly. Okay, so this game he was white. Okay, so taking a look at xQc games, e4 e5, knight 3 d6 d4. Okay, so pretty standard. Black plays d6, you play d4. It's like the Scotch, but again, this setup for black is called the Philidor opening. So takes queen d4, knight c6, bishop b5, pretty standard. Yeah, okay, so there isn't much to talk about in this first game, but again, I think you need to be mindful when your queen is under attack like this and you make a pin. You need to be aware of your opponent trying to break this pin so that they can capture a queen. So that's the first one. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, next game is a game that he also lost, unfortunately, to Antonio Jimenez. e4 e5 knight 3. Okay, so he continues to play the Petrov. Okay, actually pretty good. I like this. Queen e7. It's not perhaps the most standard way of playing, but it is pretty secure here. So knight e4. Okay, bishop g4 takes. Knight b4. Pretty good stuff. Good stuff for xQc. Very nice. Okay, so pretty good. Castles, good. d5, perfect play. Okay, very good. Ooh, well, that's not so good. Actually, one thing you want to be aware of is when your king is very safe with a bunch of pawns in front of your king, you really don't want to push pawns to expose him. If anything, you could maybe play a6 to create the square, the Luft as they say in German, where the king can go to this a7 square, but you almost never want to thrust these pawns, which are basically the protection for your king here, on this b8 square. So b5 knight e5. Yeah, and now the problem is the knight gets a great square, there jumps, and for example, yeah, knight c6 wins the game. But even theoretically, let's say white takes here, the problem is that even in a position like this, white can play a4 and your king is very open here. This rook is gaining a lot of threats on this what's going to be an open A file soon. This knight is outposted, it can go to c6, and the queen is really well placed on e3. So I think the main thing for this game is xQc played this really well, but in a position like this, there are a couple things. First of all, you don't need to go here. You could possibly go here and threaten to capture the knight, or move the bishop on this diagonal, which is a very logical way to play it. But even after this, the key is just don't push these pawns. When you have this structure of 3 in front of the king, unless it's very late in the game, like an early end game, or even just flat out an end game, or sorry, I mean a late middle game or early end game, you almost never want to push the pawns in front of your king, especially not these 2 pawns. The most common formation is to have this connection of 3. This is the most common theme. Sometimes you can go here and have this combination, but there are very few scenarios where you want to push a pawn here or push a pawn here. Occasionally you can push this one, but you never want to push these 2 pawns 2 squares forward in such a scenario. You only want to push the pawn here to create the luft for the king and have this this 3 pawn formation, or go b6 and create this 3 pawn formation, or you can tuck the king on b7. So that's important to note as well. Anyway, that's the second game. Let's keep going. What else do we have? We have the game between xQc and Mipwhip, which xQc wins. Let's take a look at this game. So e4 e5, knight f3, knight f6 takes. Okay, so Mipwhip, by the way, plays this very poorly. Perfect, man. xQc, look at xQc, from literally making blunders in the opening to playing perfect openings. Absolutely perfect. Again, he sees the right triangle threat on this diagonal to win the pawn on e5, takes, again, right triangles to win this rook as well. Wait, sorry, wait a second. Okay, he does the wrong order, he gets away with it. Again, you do need to take the rook first though. So he takes the pawn. His opponent hangs the rook anyway. Check. Very good, very good, very good. This is all perfect. Oh, yikes, 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 yikes. Yeah, that's kind of unfortunate, but he did win this game somehow still. Don't ask me how. Knight c2 is a good move, but bishop f2. Oh, and his opponent missed queen takes rook. This was a perfect fossil for black, because after you take, if black goes check, takes the rook with check, you can only block, and then you end up getting ice skater here, because the king cannot capture and the pawns prevent any escape, and the rook on f8 holds the queen on f1. So that's a little bit unfortunate. So he takes, then rook d5. Now we reach an endgame. This is actually pretty good from xQc. Takes, rook a6, very good. Rook a5, also extremely good move here by xQc to win the pawn here, understanding that by pushing this pawn forward, that black cannot take the pawn because you lose the rook, and when black pushes, you go rook a5, and now this is actually very close to a draw. Black might still technically have some way to win, but it's going to be very difficult here. So he goes a3, takes a2, rook c5, king d7. I guess Mipwhip ran out of time here because xQc won. The important thing is, in this position, you do not go here to attack laterally, because if you try to attack laterally, I can gambit the rook by making a check here, attacking the king. I can play here, attacking the king, and after king takes rook, black makes a queen. So what you do here is, instead of defending by the side, you put the rook here where it attacks, and if the rook ever tries to check, you just take the rook, and if the rook goes off, you just eat the juicer. And furthermore, even if black goes king here, you can just wait with your king on these 2 squares, because when black puts the king here, your pawn holds the rook, so there's no way for the king to cross this whole line, and you just leave everything here and you just move the king back and forth. Potentially you could even maybe try to get cheeky with king g4 here, trying to run up, because if rook comes here to attack the pawn, you take and you protect the pawn with the rook on a2. And again, you can maybe even run the king all the way up to h6 in the long run, potentially. But the main thing is the pawn holds the rook here and you're attacking the pawn. The rook cannot move anywhere because there are no checks on the king. So whenever the rook moves, you lose the pawn on a2. So this is really important. But nonetheless, very good game overall by xQc. A couple, I mean, perhaps he got distracted, things were going on, but overall I would say a pretty good game by xQc. Review his next game. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so his next game was against Fabwa Stacken. So e4 c6, Hikaru can't. Good. Very good. See, and this is what I'm going to say, you guys. This is what I would say that's amazing about xQc. Like, honestly, when you look back to PogChamps 1 or when he first was getting into chess, he never would have played an opening like this with white. Never would have played something like this. So he never would have played something like this.
Michel Fantino just subscribed.
So this is very, very good by xQc. Good standard solid opening. Knight c3, very good. Bishop g5, excellent move. Pressure on the diagonal.
Hi Hikaru, I am somewhat new to the chess world and have been practicing two defenses for black, the modern defense and the Sicilian. I have gone between both but not sure which one I should study more.
I'm not
What
sure.
are your
Anyway,
thoughts?
I'll get back to that. So c5 takes, queen b5. Not the best move per se, but it's a good move. What I would have recommended here, there are a couple options. The first option is to play this. It's a little bit dank, but what it does is by forcing the rook to move, black can no longer castle. So even if black develops the bishop down the road, for example, you still have no way to castle because the rook has moved, so you can't castle the king. So this is one thing that's important, not super important though, but it's something to keep in mind that if you have an opportunity to do something like this, it may not look great because you just attack the rook and the rook scoots over, but it prevents black from ever castling the king out of the center. And then secondly, you can play knight here, threatening to use this pawn to hold the knight here on this d6 square, from whence it will attack the king on e8 and potentially take the pawn on f7. Like, let's say black goes here, you check, black can't take, so you take with the pawn, king here, and then you take the pawn and you fork the queen and the rook, and black will lose one of these pieces. So that's the first thing that's really important. And secondly,
just subscribed.
Secondly, what black would like to do is move the knight, like move the knight here so he can cover the square, or move the knight here so he covers the square, and knight here so he covers the square. But in this case, black cannot move the knight because when you move the knight, you lose the queen. So therefore, this position is just winning because there's no way to prevent this knight from jumping, because you can't move the knight off of e7 due to the pin from the bishop on g5 towards the knight and towards the queen. So it's just winning for white. Queen b5, however, is not a bad move either. It creates another double attack or a triple attack where you create another right triangle. So black goes knight d7, knight a4, good move. c4, knight c5, pretty decent. Okay, so see, now this is not normally how you want to play, because the thing is, when you think about this position, black is lacking development. All these pieces have not come into the game yet, whereas white is castled. You have the knight still out, the bishop and the queen. All your pieces are sort of in harmony, so trying to trade off material here is maybe not the best thing to do. Like, for example, there are two things here that are really good. First thing, which is really, really hard to see, not easy, is to go knight here. Now, the reason this is really good is because if black eats the queen, you go knight here, and the king is stuck. It's just checkmate, game over. King cannot go anywhere. The bishop and the queen are in the way, and the king can't come up. So knight is just checkmating the king.
Just subscribe. Have a good evening, Hikaru.
And if you play queen takes knight, now I take the rook. So this actually is a very beautiful checkmating pattern. It's like some other checkmate, and it's just winning for white. Now, that being said, it's a difficult move to find. Personally, if you don't spot the tactic, I still think you should go queen a4, keep the pin alive, and you kind of have a double pin here. Your bishop on g5 pins on this one, and your queen on a4 pins on the other diagonal towards the king. So these four pieces in this box are all pinned and tied up in knots here. So it's hard to see that, but anyway, we have a trade. Takes. Oh, and rook a7, very nice. Also, big props to xQc for capturing with the a pawn. Opens up the file for the rook where it has access. And then secondly, beyond that, it follows the principles that when you have pawn captures, you always want to capture towards the center of the board. You always want to try to capture towards the board center as opposed to away from the center. So it's very good because it opens the file, but it also follows the principle of where you capture with your pawns towards the center of the board, which is a very important theme that you need to remember. So bishop g7 takes, king e8 takes, king f8, bishop f6, very good move. Knight e5, oh, very nice move from xQc, perfect. So he uses the pawn to support the rook, and now he uses the knight, and rook h7, knight d7, king g8, knight takes b8, and his opponent resigns here. Very, very beautiful game from xQc. More or less, I would say close to perfect. I mean, he could have improved maybe with this knight b5 move, which I think is important to note, that when you have this, what we call like the French structure where the pawns get pushed, if there's ever a moment where you get your pawns like this and you have an opportunity to jump with your knight to d6 and there's no way for black to prevent it, it's always good. For example, the thematic way to defend against this would be to push the pawn so that when you develop, I can then go here and the pawn holds against this knight b5 threat. So normally when you have the French structure, black always needs to be aware of this. Now, for example, let's say the queen is here, c5 is completely fine, because now if you go knight b5, for example, black can just move the knight and there's really no threat. I just move the knight and the bishop covers the square. But in this specific situation, it doesn't work because of this pin from the bishop to the queen on d8. So it's actually very, very it's just winning for white. Nonetheless, very, very well played by xQc. Probably one of the best games I've seen from him. So let's keep going on. Let's take a look at the one last game that he played. This was the game against he was black in this game, so let's rotate the board against Agar Walgarov. G3 d5, bishop g2, knight c6, d4, knight f6, e3 e6, knight c3, bishop b4. Okay, standard. Develop the knights, get the bishop out, castle the king. Very, very good. Bishop d2, castles, a3, trade, a6, queen d3, b5. Very, very good. Is he playing right now? I don't think he is. I'll check. No, he's not playing. Okay, so queen d3, b5. Okay, pretty good. Rook e8, e5. Okay, now here it doesn't quite work because white has 1 2 3 covering the square and black only has 1 2 defending, so he miscalculates the number here. But nonetheless, I think the fact that he sees the idea of opening the diagonal is very, very good. Even if in this case it's a blunder, understanding that black really does want to get this bishop out on this diagonal, it makes sense. So e5 takes bishop. Ooh, takes. How did he win this game? Wait a second. How did he win this game? Wait, okay. Because when white takes this pawn, you should go knight to e4 first of all, because the pawn supports the knight and you're also threatening to capture the bishop on c3. Secondly, after this, you can also still play knight e4, pawn supports, and you attack the bishop. So it goes here. Okay, how does he win this game? Oh, good lord. Good lord. Good grief. Okay. Anyway, rook d8, king takes, rook a8, knight c2. Let's keep going. Rook b6. Great move here by xQc, by the way. Great move. Puts the rook behind the pawn so you can just push the pawn all the way down the board and get it to the end of the board and make a queen. Very, very excellent technical move from xQc here, playing rook b6. Okay, so check here. b4, good move. And now he takes, and now you just run the pawn. Now, one thing that's important is white can also go king e2 here. And now you cannot push the juicer because after pawn to f3, it's checkmate. The king covers all the squares, the pawn's threatening the king, and you can't actually go back because the rook covers every square on this fifth rank. So king e2 could have been extremely dangerous. Now on king e2, the way that you play this here is you actually throw this check in first, white takes, and you go b2 now. Because now if white checks, you can just take the pawn, your king is free, and your rook supports the pawn, and you're just going to make a queen next move again. And so there's no way, but here you need to split the pawns, because here after f3 you have no king squares. So you throw this check in, takes, and then you go here, and now if check, you just take. If white, I don't know, does anything else, you just make a queen. So very, very important to do that. Really, really important. Oh, do you want me to turn off the evaluation bar? I can turn it off if you guys want me to. But anyway, but the point is that it's just winning. So king d3, b2, d1, rook b4. Good move, trying to trade the rooks, important. e6, rook b8, check, check, and take the rook. And very, very nice game. Yeah, very nice game. What more to say? Very, very nice from xQc overall. After the game became competitive again. Now he didn't play the opening great. Obviously e5 is a bad move. What I recommend in this position, going back to this position after b4, would be to move the knight to attack the bishop. Let's say white retreats, and now because of the structure of where the pawns are, you can actually use your knight and rotate and get this huge bastion square on c4, get the knight here, and it's supported by multiple pawns. And then, for example, let's say white castles here, attacking the bishop. You can now play e5 because you have 1 2 3 to guard the pawn, whereas your opponent has 1 2 3 attacking it. So this would be an idea to keep in mind. Again, mind you, it's very tricky understanding these night jumps, but just when they're pawns that are like one square away, kind of like this, that are mirroring each other, be aware if you can like get a piece to the square that your pawns defend, for example. That's actually really an important thing. Just keep that in mind if it's possible to get something there. But anyway, overall I thought pretty good. Once he got back in the game, obviously in the middle there were a couple really bad moves in a row, but overall it was pretty good. So good stuff.